Before we proceed, viewer discretion is strongly advised. This content is presented solely for informational and entertainment value. What follows is the exact courtroom testimony from the Sean Diddy Combs legal proceedings, as documented by inner-city press reporters. On day 7 of the high-profile trial, proceedings were descending into disarray when an unexpected development occurred. Without warning, Joe Rogan entered the courtroom, the renowned comedian, media personality, and creator of the planet's top podcast. He arrived alone, carrying nothing but a slim black journal filled with unsettling revelations. What began as casual discussion on his show had evolved into something far more consequential. Now, under oath, Rogan wasn't sharing rumors, but rather first-hand accounts, documented evidence, and verifiable facts that transcended sensational headlines. The moment he started speaking, it became apparent this was no ordinary celebrity case. The testimony marked the beginning of an institutional collapse, with Rogan positioned to deliver crucial truths. Before we continue, I just want to say, real stories like this take time to research, verify, and tell responsibly. If you're finding value in what you're hearing, do me a quick favor. Hit that like button, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to the channel so we can keep uncovering the truth together. Your support truly makes a difference. The trial commenced amid intense media scrutiny. Journalists packed the courtroom as speculation spread rapidly, yet no one anticipated the bombshell moment when Rogan, the famous stand-up comic, UFC analyst, and a podcasting giant, appeared as an unannounced witness. Far from a media ploy, this was a serious intervention, and Rogan came prepared with damning evidence. Wearing a dark gray blazer and jeans, Rogan cut a casual but focused figure as he took the stand. The room instantly hushed. No cameras were allowed, but court sketch artists scrambled to capture every expression. Diddy's defense team looked baffled. The judge asked Rogan to state his name and profession. Joseph James Rogan. I'm the host of the Joe Rogan Experience. He didn't waste time. I'm not here to gossip, he began. I'm here because I've been given first-hand accounts from guests on my show, accounts that connect deeply to what's happening in this courtroom. I also have recordings, and yes, I've kept them secure. A wave of murmurs swept through the courtroom. Rogan was now being treated like a whistleblower. He spoke about interviews he had conducted over the years with ex-bodyguards, former label executives, and industry insiders. A lot of them were too scared to speak off the record, so they came to me, not as a judge, but as someone who wouldn't cut the tape when the truth got uncomfortable. Then Rogan dropped the first bombshell. Back in 2023, I had a guest on, former security detail for an A-list artist. Off air, he said, Diddy had files, physical evidence, videos, recordings, a private server kept in a bunker-like room at his Miami compound. And what's more chilling is that this guest said Jay-Z, LeBron James, and other public figures knew about the freak-offs. Not necessarily participated, but they knew. The courtroom erupted in gasps. Diddy looked visibly disturbed. His lawyers objected, but the judge overruled them. Rogan continued, detailing how this particular guest had witnessed a number of these parties firsthand. He described them as rituals more than parties, Rogan said. Phones confiscated, guests blindfolded. The term freak-off was code inside the industry, and everyone acted like it was normal. The prosecution asked if Rogan had brought any recordings. He nodded. I submitted excerpts to the DA's office before coming here. They contain audio of unnamed insiders talking about these events. Some of the voices have been verified by forensic audio teams. As the judge ordered those recordings to be officially logged, Rogan said something that made every juror sit forward. I've had Navy SEALs on my show. I've had conspiracy theorists, professors, even CIA whistleblowers. And I've never heard anything this disturbing come from the lips of people so high up in entertainment. He looked toward Diddy and finished part of his statement with a quiet fury. This isn't just celebrity gossip. This is systemic abuse, hiding behind platinum records and red carpet smiles. As Rogan settled further into his testimony, the court permitted him to recount specific stories shared on his podcast over the past several years. He explained that he had been piecing together a disturbing pattern since as early as 2018. One of my early guests was a tour manager for a popular R&B act. He came on to talk about the dark side of the music industry, drug culture, pay for play, and NDAs. But during the break, he told me something different. He said Diddy's parties weren't just indulgent, they were dangerous. Rogan emphasized that many of these conversations never made the final cut. People were scared. One guest asked me to blur his voice, distort his name, and even record his segment in a remote cabin. He then mentioned a producer who had been invited to a Diddy-hosted event in 2015. He told me what he saw there left him shaking. Cameras hidden in smoke detectors, people slipping things into drinks, A-list celebrities pretending not to notice. Joe read from notes taken during that off-air interview. He said, and I quote, "I saw people being filmed against their will, and Diddy called it leverage." The judge asked if these claims were verified. Rogan clarified, many were anecdotal, but too many lined up to ignore. These weren't rumors passed in hallways. These were detailed accounts, timelines, locations, multiple people describing the same set of behaviors. He explained how he kept a private archive of these unaired stories, protected by NDAs he crafted with legal advisors. I didn't want to be sued into oblivion, but I also didn't want this stuff buried. Then he referenced the Jane Doe lawsuits. I started connecting dots when names and behaviors in those lawsuits matched what my guests had been whispering for years. At one point, he revealed that a prominent music video director came to him in 2022, sobbing. He told me he had footage, unreleased, uncensored, of one of Diddy's parties. Said he was too scared to go public, but he'd been blackmailed into filming these events for over a decade. Joe concluded by saying, "This isn't a court of opinion anymore. This is a reckoning. And I'm here because people who trusted me with the truth deserve to be heard, even if they're too afraid to show their faces." Joe Rogan took a deep breath before pivoting to the moment that made headlines across the world. Elon Musk's unexpected remarks on his podcast about Jennifer Lopez and Diddy. "It was casual at first," Joe said. "We were talking about Hollywood hypocrisy, how certain celebrities speak up about politics, but stay dead silent when it's about people they actually know." Elon brought up Jennifer Lopez. The courtroom leaned in. He said she dated Diddy, went to his parties, knew what he was like. Why hasn't she ever warned anyone? Rogan paused. That clip exploded. It got millions of views. But what struck me was how fast people jumped to defend J-Lo rather than asking what she might be hiding. He reminded the court of the 1999 nightclub shooting that led to Shine's prison sentence. Jennifer was in the car when the allegedly thrown out the window. She said Diddy didn't do it. He walked free. Shine went to prison, and Jennifer. She kept dating Diddy for 2 more years. Joe let that sit with the jury before continuing. What does it say when someone walks out of a shooting, helps protect the man arrested, and stays with him while someone else takes the fall? He then added a chilling line. What happens if you're only perfect for the devil? Rogan pointed out that while many celebrities posted about Diddy's philanthropy, none spoke up when the lawsuits started piling up. Where was J-Lo when the freak off tapes were mentioned? Where was she when Shine finally told the truth about 1999? He ended with a pointed statement. "I'm not saying she did anything criminal. I'm saying silence in the face of abuse is complicity, and too many people in Diddy's orbit have mastered the art of disappearing when the cameras turn." Joe Rogan leaned forward as he returned to a story that had haunted him for months, a tale involving what one of his off-the-record guests called the bunker. A former bodyguard who worked at Diddy's Miami compound came on my show in 2022. Rogan began. We didn't air that segment. He got cold feet. But what he told me off mic stuck with me. According to Rogan, the bodyguard described a reinforced basement-like vault buried beneath the estate, accessible only by biometric scan. Inside it, the witness claimed, were dozens of encrypted hard drives. He called it the black box. Said it was Diddy's insurance policy. Rogan explained footage of freak-off parties, blackmail material, contracts, hidden camera videos, and not just of random people, of celebrities, executives, politicians. The courtroom gasped. Diddy's defense team visibly squirmed. One juror reached for their water glass with trembling hands. The man told me he once walked in during a backup session. There were racks of servers, all air-gapped. He didn't get far. A guy with a gun told him to leave the room immediately. "That's Diddy's church," the guard said. Joe paused. That phrase stuck with me. Diddy's church. Because whatever was in that room, it was sacred to someone. Sacred because it held leverage. Thus, before we continue, if you're finding this coverage insightful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps bring more in-depth reports like this to light. Drop a comment below. What's your take on these revelations? Stay tuned for more. The judge allowed the prosecution to enter Rogan's affidavit containing this account into evidence, clarifying that although the physical existence of the vault hadn't been independently verified, corroboration from multiple podcast guests made it relevant to establishing a behavioral pattern. Rogan explained that two other guests, both stylists who had worked with bad boy artists, independently described a downstairs room where security cameras were facing inward. One even said she was asked to sign an NDA in that very room, after noticing what looked like a disguised peephole embedded in the mirror. "That's what's chilling," Rogan said. "People describe these spaces, these rituals in the exact same way, years apart, from different walks of life." Then he revealed something the courtroom hadn't heard before. 3 months ago, a whistleblower reached out to my team anonymously, claimed they worked for a third-party data recovery company in Miami, said they were hired to extract encrypted video from a corrupted server, claimed that some of it showed guests at Diddy's events in compromising situations. I didn't air it, but I archived it, because if this trial reaches federal seizure level, the government might already have that drive. He ended the segment by looking directly at Diddy and saying, "If you're innocent, let them search the basement. Open the vault. Release what's in the black box." By this point, the courtroom had shifted. Joe Rogan wasn't just a celebrity witness. He was an informant speaking to a pattern of manipulation, fear, and silence. "I want to talk about patterns," he said, flipping through a thick set of handwritten notes, "because this isn't just about parties. It's about control, fear, image, and silence." Rogan laid out a list of past guests who hinted at secrets but never followed through. One was a hairstylist who worked with A-list talent. She came on the show to talk about fashion, but off air, she told me she left the industry because of what Diddy made her witness. She said one night at a Hamptons house party, she saw someone being filmed in a private room through a two-way mirror. Then he pivoted. I asked her who else was there that night. She hesitated, and then she said a name. Jay-Z. Gasps. Rogan clarified. She didn't say Jay-Z participated in anything, but she said he was present, multiple times. She described him walking through those parties like a ghost, seen but not seen. He never spoke, never lingered, but he was there. The implication wasn't that Jay-Z committed a crime. It was that he saw and said nothing. I've had ex-security, dancers, personal assistants, producers all mention the same thing. Jay-Z and Diddy were like two sides of the same coin. One was loud, chaotic, the other controlled, quiet, calculated. But the scenes were always the same. Rogan said he once confronted an industry insider about why nobody called out the behavior. He laughed, Joe said. He told me, "You don't take down Puff without pulling Hav down, too." The prosecution seized on that line. It supported their theory of institutional protection, people turning blind eyes to maintain access, status, and power. Joe added, "If Diddy was the fire, Jay-Z was the smoke detector that never went off." He then spoke about how his team received anonymous messages warning them to drop the Diddy topics. One email said, "Don't dig too deep, Joe. You'll end up like the ones who did." We traced that IP address. It came from a firm tied to Roc Nation's PR team. The judge allowed that statement with a cautionary note. Rogan looked to the jury and said, "Silence is a weapon, and this entire machine, it's built on people keeping their mouth shut. But I'm not built that way." Joe's tone shifted as he brought up the last set of names. Those who, he said, were in the wrong room at the wrong time. "You all remember the Manzero lawsuit," he began. "The one where a man claimed he was paraded around Diddy's party in a mask made of human anatomy. That's not rumor. I spoke with someone who was on that yacht. He described a young videographer, early 20s, who had been hired to film an event in January 2023. He told me he was told to document only the happy stuff, but what he saw, he never recovered from it." Joe then read from an anonymized transcript. There were celebrities everywhere. LeBron James, Gloria Estefan, Jay-Z, Beyonce, people smiling. But the further back you went, the darker it got. There were rooms with red lights, people restrained, and a man masked being led around like a pet. The courtroom was dead silent. Joe added that the man claimed to have handed over his memory cards at the end of the night. He said Diddy's team gave him $5,000 and took the footage. They told him he would get a final cut later. He never heard from them again. What made this testimony so potent was how it tied directly to a real civil complaint. Rogan connected the dots. You think this is all chaos? It's not. It's a system. And the scariest part? The people we idolize are in the rooms where it happens. He ended with a chilling line. If even one of those tapes gets played in court, half this industry is finished. He looked down, closed his notebook, and said, "I'm not afraid of getting sued. I'm afraid of what happens if we keep pretending this doesn't exist." Joe Rogan's tone shifted once again, moving from celebrity complicity to the infamous 2023 yacht party that had been whispered about in court filings but never publicly detailed. Until now, the yacht story. "People think it's a myth," Rogan began, "but it's real, and I've got testimony from 2 different people who were on that boat. One crew, one guest." The courtroom froze. Diddy's legal team started whispering frantically. Joe unfolded a letter from a former yacht staffer, redacted to protect their identity. They were hired for what they thought was a private music video shoot. They were told the passengers were VIPs, and under no circumstances were they allowed to use their phones. Security patted them down before boarding. He paused. Once the boat was in international waters, the tone changed. Curtains were drawn. A private room was locked. Then came what the crew called the rotation. New guests brought in every hour, escorted by security. Joe's voice grew colder. The witness said there were hidden cameras placed inside mirror frames. Some of the staff were instructed to spike drinks. They refused, but others didn't. A hush overtook the gallery, and the guest who came forward, he wasn't supposed to be there. He was a last-minute addition, a favor to someone in the industry. He thought it would be networking. It turned out to be something else entirely. Joe quoted the guest's account. There was a man in a mask. People were laughing at him. It was like performance art, except it wasn't. People had their phones out. Some of the people watching were very, very famous. One of those names, Rogan said, appeared in multiple testimonies. Gloria Estefan. No one's saying she participated in anything, he clarified, but her name came up. Just like LeBron's, just like Beyonce's, just like Jay-Z's. It paints a disturbing picture. Joe then dropped the biggest detail yet. The man said that after the yacht docked, he was offered money to forget what he saw. He refused. 2 weeks later, his apartment was broken into. Only thing taken, his external hard drives. The court ordered the statement entered into evidence. Rogan looked at the jury. People risked their lives to speak the truth, and others were paid to forget it. By now, Joe Rogan's testimony had shifted the mood of the entire trial. No longer was this about celebrity antics. It was about systemic intimidation, power, and blackmail. Let me talk about leverage, he said plainly. Because what Diddy created wasn't just a party scene, it was an ecosystem of silence. He told the court that multiple podcast guests off air, in whispers, and sometimes in tears, described the exact same process. You're invited to a party. You're told to sign an NDA. You're filmed without knowing. And then a month later, you get a text. Not a threat, just a reminder. Had fun last month. Let's keep that between us. Joe called it a web of invisible handcuffs. He described how a Grammy-winning producer told him he was offered a massive career boost in exchange for deleting a video taken at a Diddy party. He refused. A week later, 3 venues canceled his tour. Rogan also noted how he'd received legal letters from PR firms warning him to stop discussing certain individuals. He didn't name them, but the jury didn't need a roadmap. Then came the chilling part. A guest who once worked for a celebrity security agency told me there was a master folder, a real one. Diddy called it the rainy day file. Joe said this folder contained backup footage, stored off-site, and encrypted. Insurance, basically. The theory is that if anyone tried to take him down, he'd leak what he had on them. He took a deep breath. One of those files, the source told me, featured a very powerful politician. The name's not mine to say, but if the feds have those tapes, this trial is just the beginning. The judge ordered that line stricken, but the damage was done. Joe closed the segment with, "This wasn't fame. This was fear. He didn't just throw parties, he built a vault of silence. And if one key turns, it all comes flooding out." As his testimony neared its end, Joe Rogan stood from the witness chair. He wasn't asked to, but he needed to finish standing. "This isn't about canceling Diddy," he said. "It's about finally holding someone accountable who built an empire on fear." The judge allowed him to make a closing statement. The courtroom was dead quiet. Even the sketch artist had stopped drawing. Rogan continued, "Over the years, I've interviewed astronauts, scientists, philosophers, comedians, and ex-spooks. You learn to detect when someone's lying. You also learn when someone's holding back because they're scared. And I'm telling you, what I've heard about Diddy didn't come from trolls. It came from people who shook while speaking, people who looked over their shoulders every 10 seconds. He paused. "If the feds don't find the footage, the public will. Someone, somewhere, has it. And when it comes out, this courtroom will look like a warm-up act." He then glanced at Diddy. "I don't know if you started this. I don't know if you inherited it. But I know you kept it going. And now, you're watching it crumble from the inside out." The judge asked if Rogan had anything else to add. He nodded slowly. "I've said a lot on the mic. Some of it dumb, some of it funny. But this is the one time I needed every word to count. Because if even one kid out there is saved from stepping into that kind of nightmare, then all of this, every threat, every NDA, every silent producer was worth breaking." He stepped down. The jury watched in silence as Rogan walked past the defendant's table. And for the first time in days, Diddy didn't look up. This has been an explosive testimony, and there's much more to uncover. If you found this breakdown revealing, smash that like button, share it to spread awareness, and subscribe to stay updated on the latest developments. Your support fuels this channel's mission to bring truth to light. Drop a comment with your thoughts. We read everyone. Stay vigilant, and we'll see you in the next video.